All right. Gentleman right here in the blue.
Senator, first of all, thank you for honoring the wishes of the people and not taking lobbyist money.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. You bet.
It's been reported that you and your wife are in the globalist CFR, which is a Council on Foreign Relations. I'd like to know if that is true. And also, I'd like to know where you stand on the North American Union, which has been confirmed recently in the press. Ron Paul actually spoke about it, and the Congress has actually spent some money on it. This North American Union involves a union much like the European Union, only with Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and the possible merging of the money system into a piece called the Amero, which would actually strip the United States of some of its sovereignty and perhaps our rights. Where do you stand on that?
Well, first of all, I'm not the Council on Foreign Relations. I don't know if I'm a official member. I've spoken there before. It basically is just a forum where a bunch of people talk about foreign policy, and so there's nothing. There's no official membership. I don't have a card or, a special handshake or anything like that. In terms of this North America, union, this has been something I know Ron Paul's talked about and people have been talking about. I have to say, with all due respect, that I see no evidence of this actually taking place. I think this has been something that has been ginned up in certain blogs and the internet. It was based partly on the fact that there's this highway being built in Texas that will facilitate more transportation and travel between Mexico and the intercontinental United States on up through Canada, and so people have perceived that this potentially means that somehow there's going to be this union like the European Union. There's no evidence that that's taking place. NAFTA helped to break down barriers of trade between those three countries, and I was opposed to NAFTA because I thought that it didn't have the labor and the environmental standards and the safety standards that would look out for U.S. workers. But I don't think that there's some conspiracy to create this one, continental government between Canada and Mexico. I see no evidence of that. All right? Okay, next. All right. It's a young lady's turn. All right, right here. Go ahead. Yes, you.
Senator Obama, the youth of America and many Americans consider you a bright beacon of hope for the future, and you are a civil rights advocate. But could you please explain to me why you voted to reauthorize the Patriot Act, which is the worst attack on civil rights of Americans? And we do now know that George Bush's fabricated reasons to go to war were fabricated, so we do not need the Patriot Act to keep us safe.
Let me tell you what. First, it's not actually true that the Patriot Act was the worst. Most of the problems that we have had in civil liberties were not done through the Patriot Act. They were done through executive order by George W. Bush. And that's why the first thing I will do when I am president is call in my Attorney General and have he or she review every executive order to determine which of those have undermined civil liberties, which are unconstitutional, and I will reverse them with a stroke of a pen. And so that's actually how the worst abuses have occurred. That's what happened with Guantanamo. That's what happened with the warrantless wiretaps. That's what's happened with the suspension of habeas corpus. That's what's happened in terms of the rounding up of Americans of Muslim extraction. Those weren't done through the Patriot Act. Those were all done separately. The first Patriot Act, I wasn't there, so I did not vote for that. The second one, I actually worked with Russ Feingold, who was one of the people who opposed it, to try to amend it to deal with some of its excesses. there were some provisions in the Patriot Act that actually did address changes that needed to take place. And let me give you a specific example. Prior to the Patriot Act, you could not wiretap a phone that wasn't land-based. Now think about it. Nobody uses a land-based phone anymore. Certainly, people who might be engaging in terrorism aren't going to be using an old dial-up phone, right? So it made sense then to change that law, and there were some other provisions that made sense. There were a number of provisions that went way overboard, including, for example, going through library records. We instituted a series of amendments that changed some of the worst excesses of the previous law. Some of the other amendments were blocked by the administration and the Republican Congress. But I want everybody to understand, you know, I taught constitutional law for 10 years. I take the Constitution very seriously. The biggest problems that we're facing right now have to do with George Bush trying to bring more and more power into the executive branch and not go through Congress at all. And that's what I intend to reverse when I'm President of the United States of America. All right. How much more time do we have? We got time for 2 more questions. All right.